becoming an artist, I think endurance is key. And if you don't have the patience, the mentality, and endurance in you, then it would be a very, very difficult journey. There was a lot of rage that I was like, I didn't get in. I'll show you what I can do. I also think being an artist is a very selfish journey because it's about finding yourself and then sharing that to others. And I was directing something, and then I took a break, and I felt my heart pouncing. Very dangerous for everybody, but we had to get this last shot. But the location turned out something that I didn't expect. A lot of just ugly thoughts because they're spending so much time alone, and they equate that as falling behind.
Yeah.
And I think that's so wrong. I think, spending time alone and being comfortable with it is the greatest strength that you can have in living today's society, because so many people are not comfortable with that.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the First Act Break podcast, where we break down the art, business, and hustle of breaking into the film industry. Today we have a dear friend, Justin Roh, today with us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Welcome. And you are a USC film director who graduated last year, and now are in the real world.
Yeah, very exactly.
Yeah. Oh, well, walk us through applying to film school. I mean, that is already, 5 years ago now?
Jesus.
What was that like for you?
Now that you put it that way, it sounds like eternity ago. Film has been something that I've always wanted to do since I was 5th grade. Mm-hmm. And this was back in Korea. So, like most schools in Asia are not really equipped for students to continue, dreaming film. But I was very lucky that my family moved to the States. So I was able to continue that dream. And throughout high school, I really didn't get involved in a lot of filmmaking because my high school was more STEM oriented. But I still really wanted to do film. So although my curriculum was not filmy at all, I think I still dreamt and worked on kind of early on screenplays that were very bad. But for some reason, I didn't really research that much into film schools. So all I knew were kind of USC, NYU. So those are my top 2 schools. And I have a very funny story with writing for USC. I knew early on that they required a film, like a 5-minute film. So I had my friend who lives next door to kind of film something with. And I had that film prepared early on in summer, and I was very confident that I'm, ready and I can just apply to film schools after my Common App is done. And writing the Common App basic essay took me like 3 months, and it's like 600-word essay. It took me 3 months. I put a lot of effort into it. And now it's like 3 days before the USC Film School deadline. And I get into the portal, and it lets me to a separate portal called Slide Room, which I had no idea about. And I'm expecting, as I'm clicking, there to be a film submission portal. But as I click, I'm encountered by a question, a 1,000-word essay question about your artist statement. And I'm thinking like this is like, not, it doesn't pertain to me because I just thought it was a film thing. But I scroll through, and there's a section that requires a screenplay. I scroll through, there's a section that requires a project that you succeed and a project that you failed. So now I have to write 4 additional essays that, in total, like it's worth 3,000 words in the matter of 3 days that I have.
That's crazy.
So now I'm sitting in front of my laptop, truly contemplating whether I should, give up on my dream because I discovered this 3 days before submission deadline. But then I'm also thinking, like this is a kind of life-defining moment. Like I'm in front of a time where if I decide to do this, I can continue my dream. If I quit, then I might be pivoted to political science or agriculture, which were the 2 options. And I also wasn't brave enough to tell my parents that I skipped on the admission requirements so I could then apply to the film school. So the next 3 days, I went crazy and I wrote down all the essays, and they were all very, very poorly written. But I think because I was rushed by time, I had a more clear focus. It was more like do or die moment. So like when you're procrastinating until the very end, you sometimes get very good results. I think I was very lucky to do that. But on the second day of the admission deadline, so like 2 days before, I had a concert to go to. And it was a pianist concert that I really wanted to go to, and it was super expensive, and I couldn't get a refund. So although I had so many essays to write, I had to attend the concert. So I went there, and I got super inspired by the pianist and the performance. So I wrote my screenplay about the pianist, about a Japanese pianist who's blind, and she's applying to a like competitions. I wrote about that. So I submitted that application to USC, but immediately I knew I wasn't gonna get in because I also mistakenly put the wrong GPA on the Common App portal.
What did you put?
I put, so I had 4.3 GPA out of 4, but I mistakenly put 4.3 out of 5. Which completely changes the scope. I also I omitted some SAT scores because it was the first application, because film school application is like December 1st.
Right.
So yeah, I literally like skipped on the most important elements. So I knew I wasn't gonna get it because USC is like very tough, and film school application is like competition is like 1% acceptance rate. So I knew I wasn't gonna get in. But then January, I get an email saying, "Oh, you've been selected for an interview." So I was like, "Oh, maybe I have a chance now." And the interview, so because now I have this chance, I decided this interview will save my life or it will destroy my life forever. So I decided to go on as long as I can. But my house has really poor Wi-Fi, so with the interview, it was a Skype call, but I couldn't see the professor for the entire duration of the interview. I only saw myself, so I was literally talking to myself, just hearing his voice.
Yeah.
But I still went on, and it did it for an hour and 30 minutes.
Wow.
And
That's
usually,
a really long one.
it's like 15 to 30 minutes.
Right. Just to get a sense of who you are.
But I just like started talking about films I love, and we talked about like Korean barbecue and just more random stuff until the professor received a call from his wife saying he has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
But miraculously during the interview, the professor mentioned so many great things about like the screenplay that I wrote. He was like, "Oh, it was such a good screenplay. I really loved it." And of course, I had to say, I've prepared it for so long. This has been a very personal story. And he also liked my application film, which also was shot very guerrilla style. But he said, I think this is kind of important for a lot of, like film students in high school, that it's really rare to see a student film where you really capture the eye of your protagonist, like where you really see through the protagonist. It's mostly like action, or you lose the moment where you get to sink in with the protagonist because you're cutting away or you're using loud music or something. And the professor really liked that there was an honest moment with the protagonist. Although the film itself wasn't the best quality, it was nice for him to see something truthful, I think. So I think overall from my film school application, what I took away was it doesn't have to be so elaborate, or it doesn't have to be so fancy. You don't have to really, because when you're working on film applications or just any college applications, you meet with these challenges of like you feel like you're not such an important person or a special person to really embellish yourself or emphasize certain things. If you especially had a pretty normal and kind of like uneventful life, if you're just a hardworking student or something like that, you didn't really have much drama to write on your college app. You have this fear that you don't stand out amongst others. But to be honest, like as an artist and as a student trying to become an artist, I feel like just being honest and working on your honest story as much as you can and telling it in the most honest fashion is often more acknowledged than you can imagine.
Yeah. I love that.
That's beautifully put. Yeah.
That's such a funny story too. Wow.
I know.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes really like that time pressure puts something on
Yeah.
you that you just have to get it done, and some of the times it's the best stuff you've ever
I mean,
made.
I had such a great story to talk about, in like the freshman gatherings when everybody was talking about how long they've spent preparing for SCA SCA application, and I just went, like I 3 days.
Yeah, what did you talk about in that essay though? The one that you cranked out in like 3 days,
I kind of talked about non-film stuffs, how I decided to pursue filmmaking, because my first dream was to become the president of South Korea. Because I was really interested in like social matters. I watched more news when I was like age 7, because I think as all Asian dads do, they always have to tune into the night news at a certain hour of the time. So even in my house, I'll be watching cartoons, and when it hits the clock like 8 at night, then the TV has to be the news. So I think I was very aware of what was going on socially. So I wanted to do something that could do social change. So politics and politician was something that I was very interested early on. But I think by the age 10, I realized the politicians were kind of the most corrupt people, the most unreliable people in the world. So I didn't want to become like them. And I didn't have the confidence that I wouldn't go as corrupt as them. Right. So the second option I thought that has as much social influence was film, because I really like watching films, and I thought filmmakers were able to tell something that could move people. So yeah, from then on, I just went straight into filmmaking, and I just talked all about that on the application. The memories of watching the nightly news with my dad and how that inspired me to writing screenplays and wanted to become a filmmaker.
Oh, that's great.
I'm curious though. I never really knew what your sort of experience was like as a freshman and sophomore. So the first half of your college time here. Now that you've made it, the 3-day essay got you in. What was it like the first 2 years of adjusting to this new environment where everyone was filmmakers?
I think for our cohort it was pretty tough, because the first year it was COVID, so we were all remote. So I don't think we had the best experience, but certainly we had a very unique experience, because I hope in the nearest future there won't be any cohort that spends their freshman year online. So we were in the situation where we were still stuck with our, cameras, like our respective old cameras, to shoot projects for the freshman curriculum. So I think I wouldn't say it was very positive, because I think everybody had the collective feeling of loneliness, feeling of kind of being lost very early on in freshman year, which is not, I think, the most idealistic or also, a common experience, because people, go out and have fun and enjoy to the fullest in their freshman year. But for our core, we were, stuck in our, houses and rooms. So it felt like an extension from high school. But also it was a time where I could really focus on myself, and I think I was able to kind of form more of my mindset as a filmmaker, because during that time I really wanted to go crazy into filmmaking. I had a goal, and I really remember this because I was talking to someone over the phone, and I told that person I want to go crazy into filmmaking. Like, I want to wake up and think about inspirations. And I think that kind of clicked on me. And since then, like, I'll be, taking a shower, I'll be driving, I'll be constantly thinking about new ideas or new stories. I think that time of, being isolated and being contained was a good time for me to develop that mindset. And I think oftentimes being an artist is being alone, being very isolated, kind of in your own room, and forming these foundational mindsets and thoughts. And then you go out and share with people. But just by staying with people, I don't think, especially for me, I can really focus on myself. So I think in a way that COVID year of freshman year was a great year for me to kind of discover who I was and wanted to be. In the sophomore year, I had so much fun. We were all back in campus, and I met my college friends, who I'm still very good friends with. And it was one thing I really wish I would have done was kind of be more bold in trying things out. I think I was still pretty stuck in the high school mindset of, just being safe. I wish I went out more and tried out more stuffs, because you realize after the time has passed that that time will never come back. But then when you're in that moment, you take it for granted because, it's just how it is. And you kind of forget how great that time is. But sophomore year really was a time where I didn't have any stress from the real life or had any obligations or responsibilities. There was so much that I could have tried, and I still did try a lot, but I feel like there's always that feeling of kind of a bit of a remorse that you wish you could have done more. So I feel like, yeah, sophomore year was a really packed year, but I really wish I did more in terms of just filmmaking or just finding new people. So yeah, those were the first 2 years of my college years.
So on your third year, you had 310, right?
Yeah.
What color were you?
Yellow.
You had Gibbler?
Gibbler and Petra.
Oh, how was that?
I think to do great art, you need a lot of discipline. Mm-hmm. And 310 Yellow is all about kind of discipline, almost kind of overtly too much. And I think it does break a lot of people, and it does give a lot of horrendous experience to a lot of people. I wasn't excluded from that horrendous experience.
Oh, no.
Although I would say I had really great trio mates. I didn't hate the discipline, because setting that discipline and being very harsh on what you can do or not kind of gave me more inspiration on what to do. I think artists, when they're boxed in, they sometimes come out with something that they didn't expect to create or have. So yeah, I would say my 310 was a fairly positive, good experience.
And how did that urgency help you in the future? Because 310 we make 3 movies in one semester, and you're editing before you have to produce again.
Right.
You're doing everything together and moving on. Now that you have more projects, how did that inform the creative or the producing process for you?
I think it helps you build endurance, and endurance is really key to filmmaking, I think. And just becoming an artist, I think endurance is key, because you never know when you're gonna break through, and you have to endure all the time to break through. And if you don't have the patience, the mentality, and endurance in you, then it'll be a very, very difficult journey. And 310, since it's a very fast-paced curriculum and high-stress environment, if you don't endure, then you know that you're not going to be able to pass the class, because you can easily have a mental breakdown. You can easily, fail your trio mates by kind of failing yourself by, skipping a lot of the obligations that you have. Right. I think it teaches you responsibility through making you endure. So I think 310 experience gave me the mentality to push through a lot of the struggles that I faced later on. And it taught me the harsh reality of filmmaking and kind of the harsh nature of it. But I don't think that's a negative experience. I think that's actually an invaluable experience to have as an artist and as a filmmaker, because that's the life that you're expecting to live for the rest of your life if you're continuing filmmaking. Yeah. And if you don't have that in you, then it's really hard to continue doing it.
That's great. And after 310, you were on 480, right?
Yeah, 480.
How was that?
480 I was first 80 on 480. I think I had a really good 480 experience too. I think I was very lucky with all my core curriculums, because I had really great people that I worked with. There's a difference between a great artist and a great person. And it's rarely both. Yeah. But when you're working, it's better to have great people than great artists. But that's not to say that my 480 crew were not great artists. Yeah. Eli is someone that I look forward to and respect a lot. He has a really nice kind of perspective on...
Yeah, he's the one who won the screenwriting contest, if you saw.
I didn't, but is that the one... Oh, the horror film one.
Yeah. But he made obligatory.
Yeah, Eli was the director
that was in the basement, right?
Yeah.
The same basement I shot my 310 in, I think.
Was it?
Whoa, really?
I didn't know that.
I think was Jin on that project?
Yeah.
He texted me. He was like, "Yo, this is where they shot
Yeah,
Obligatory."
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, "That's crazy."
Well, there you go.
It's crazy because I found a location.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, I
So
got
it's a full circle moment.
Yeah, I
That's
You
found a
found the
location.
location, and now Dan
Yeah.
has his 310.
It's a golden
there.
location, although it's very
is.
musty inside.
No,
Yeah.
because the 310, another 310 P1 also shot there.
Really?
And then another 310 shot there, and then this semester another 310 shot there. Like
Yeah.
everyone's shooting there.
It's a lovely location.
It's the only location that has that kind of style.
Did you find it on Gigster?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was just scrolling through, like, doom scrolling Gigster, and I found it.
Wow. And now it's become like the prestige
Yes.
USC student
Iconic.
film location.
Yes, I guess.
That's awesome.
It's great.
But yeah, Obligatory was a great experience because Eli is such a competent filmmaker who knows what he's doing. And I worked as a first AD, and as a first AD, if the director knows what he's doing and he's able to pace himself, then, you know, there isn't a better director to work for. Yeah. And producers were lovely. Producer was Sophia and Yuan. Sophia is such a great friend. My 310 Street worked on the same 480. So Graham was sound and Sophia was producer. And so it was just like a 310 get together again. We had so much fun on set. And all my best friends from film school, Elgin and Daniel, were also part of the crew. So
I was there for one
That's
day as a
awesome.
focus fuller.
So it was
Elgin
sometimes
wasn't there,
terrible because
so-
we joked around so much and we didn't get anything done.
I remember.
And you know, like as first AD, you need your crew to listen to you, but you know, my friends didn't have any respect for me, so sometimes it was tough. But
Yeah.
I think I had a really good 480 experience.
Yeah. And at that time, you already started on Hermit Crab, which
Yeah.
you kind of started in the summer before 480, which
Yeah.
was summer of 23. Is that right?
Summer of 23. Yeah.
That's right. And I remember I was driving one day and I saw you on your bicycle, and I just texted you. I was like, "Wait, was that you at the US Village?" And then there you were. And then I think that's what kind of sparked the first conversation about, you know, starting your own project. So
Really?
like, well, yeah, walk us through what that was like, you know, having that initial idea.
Uh-huh.
So now, I mean, for those who don't know, I mean, the film is made and it's finished and
Right.
it's already in festival circuit.
Right.
So just give us a rundown of how that was like.
I always thought I had to make something before I graduate, like a thesis level type of film. And 480 was coming up on the horizon, and I applied as a director, but unfortunately I didn't get in. I wasn't shortlisted, and I think I got very salty over that. And I was already in the works of writing, as one does always, and with that great saltiness in the deep heart of mine, I think it sparked something in me. It was more like rage. It was a lot of rage that I was like, I didn't get in. I'll show you what I can do.
Fine, I'll do it myself.
Yeah,
Something
literally,
like that,
and
yeah.
and I think I think
was that
sometimes that feeling is necessary for you to really get out of the bed and start something. Because I think starting a short film is like starting a small company. You need a lot of people. You need a lot of money. You need a lot of time, and there's a lot of stress that's hammering you down. And if you don't have a very strong motivation to keep yourself up and continue working, grinding, it's really hard to make it through at any stage. So I think that was kind of the initial motivation. And I really wanted to break my comfort zone and get myself out there. Yeah. So I started with friends, and I didn't know you so well back then, Richard, but I knew you wanted to produce something. And I didn't want to have the most experienced producer because I don't think I've ever disclosed any of these, but I was really thinking hard about my producing team. And I wanted to have a good balance of experienced producers, passionate producers, creative producers, and people producers. And it's really hard to have that combination because they all have very different roles and specialties. Because I think as students, none of us are perfect filmmakers. None of us are perfectly equipped with all the skills that are necessary to become a good person in that given position. So for me, it was really important to have a producing team that were diversely skilled, and also have a good chemistry. So I think I was very selective in who I was reaching out to, and I had a good reason for reaching out to. And I think I reached out to you and Elgin first, because Elgin was someone that I could consult in terms of story, probably like most comfortably. And you were someone who was so passionate about filmmaking that I knew that having you on board would keep me passionate and continue going through. And eventually happened.
Yeah.
So, and then Daniel and Leah joined, and Daniel is someone who's, very disciplined and who's very
That's
hard
right.
at working. And Leah is someone who's really good with people. And Jiang joined too. And Jiang is someone, who knows a lot of filmmaking techniques.
Oh yeah, I mean he has a whole YouTube
And
channel
who
on
has
it,
a lot
yeah.
of experience. So Jiang was more of the experienced
Oh
guy,
my. Yeah.
who had a lot of experience. So I think, and eventually I think our producing team worked really well because I don't think we had any conflicts.
No,
At least
it was
what I
very
know of.
collaborative. I mean,
Yeah.
there were definitely like Daniel was definitely the more, upfront about certain
Right.
things he
Right.
felt,
Right.
and we all had our own opinions, but I
Right.
thought it was a really great like collaborative environment
Yeah.
where we felt free to like express certain things, right? Like it's not it most of the time it's positive, but if we
Right.
had a really serious note about a story beat or something logistics, we were free to
Right.
just bring that to the table, and no one would feel like they were offended or anything. It's
Right.
just everyone's working in the same direction, and that's such a huge
And I think that's
element.
really important in terms of like the producing and the directing team, because you have to be collaborative and you have to be helping each other out. And it's really difficult when everybody has their own ego and everybody has a say that they really want to keep it in the film. Then it becomes very, very disoriented. And I feel like all of us were really good listeners and really good motivators, that I feel like we worked really well with each other.
No, I remember that one. I think he reached out to me over the summer, and I just woke up one morning, got a text. He's like, "Yo, you want to associate produce something?" And I like just screenshot it. I'm like, "Yo, wait, hold up. This is gonna be something cool." Like, and the end, and this was the beginning of the journey, right? And I was just like, that was the first time I really associate produced something,
Oh,
and it was just such a great experience, like working with such a talented group of producers, and it was like an actual producing team.
right.
And I think I learned like so much from everybody on this project.
Me too. It was like the second project I produced after producing Jia Young's film. I think I just fell in love with the idea of like having someone really talented have a script that I connect to and I see a clear vision to, and then being the person who goes, you know what, I think I might have the ability and the resources and the skills necessary to pull it together and just
Right.
bring that thing from zero to
Right.
one, from nothing to something. And I really felt like a deep connection to producing when I finished Missing at Sea. And then when you reached out, it felt like a perfect, like, it was like a God given thing that I was
Right.
like, yeah, absolutely. Like, let me do this thing. Like, it's like a gift.
Yes.
It really felt like a gift. And short films, they're called short films, but the journey is not short.
Right.
So, I mean, gosh, we started summer of 23, and now it's already early 25.
Yeah.
And
It's a lot of time.
yeah, walk us through, I mean, the whole, prep process to production and then now post. What were some of like the challenges and what are some of the ways that you, I guess, overcame those challenges with the team or with yourself?
It was a time when I didn't know a lot of people. So for me, the biggest problem that I took, or like biggest homework that I had, was finding a group of people where we all believe in the project and have fun working on it. I think that was my biggest homework, to make everyone feel connected to the project and have the best time, or not necessarily like the best time, but just have a really memorable experience, something that you can gain out of. Because I think all projects are inherently, selfish and for your own good, because it's your story and you're coming up with it, and it's what defines you as an artist. And I also think being an artist is a very selfish journey, because It's about finding yourself and then sharing that to others. But when a group of people start to believe in your selfish project and kind of associate themselves as one, then I feel like there isn't a more powerful and more amazing project than that. So that was kind of my aspiration going to pre-production. So I think I tried really hard to find the right people, the people that I can continue working after this project. And now that everything has passed, I think I can fortunately say that I found the people that I can rely on and work with. And I think I just have to say that's a very rare experience to have people that you can trust and be very comfortable with, and people who root for you, like from the bottom of their heart, and the people that you also root for from the bottom of your heart. I think that's a very difficult relationship to have. And with Hermit Crab especially, I don't think it's a film that lasts. It's the people that last. So it was something that was the latter was something was that was something I was really looking into. It wasn't the film that, of course, I wanted the film to do great, but it wasn't the film that was the priority. It was to find a group of people that I can be with for the rest of my career. So that was the emphasis of the pre-production process, and it was long. It was like
Yeah.
6-7 months.
Right. Creatively, just like drilling
Yeah,
down on the story and
creatively, the script was really difficult to lock in because I think, as all anxious filmmakers are, they get very influenced by a lot of different people around you, and it's really hard to trust your vision because, who are you to really have so much trust in your vision? You're not Christopher Nolan or Denis Villeneuve. Like, you're not an accomplished filmmaker. So when people around you on your same level are giving you advice, then you're naturally listening to them and getting affected because you don't have that credibility in you. So I think for me, it took a long time for me to get a script that I liked and also other people liked. And I'm not sure if that's the best result to gain out of. Sometimes you just have to, go with your vision, trust it, and then lock it and kind of say, thank you for your opinion, but I value mine. Sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah.
But other times, because, film is just, the nature of it is collaborative, you also have to listen to others. So it was also a process for me to learn the balance of that, to learn what to listen and also what to not listen to. So I think it was a good process, but that took about 6 or 7 months. And I think now if I were to start another project, I wouldn't be investing that much time into pre-production, or I wouldn't be investing that much time into just fine-tuning the script. I think I would be investing more time into getting the gist of the story and translating that into the visual medium. I think I'll be focusing more on that. But yeah, because it was, first project, there was a lot to think about, and also meeting a lot of different people. That takes a lot of time. Finding the right cast, that takes a lot of time. Finding new locations. Like, if you're a first-time filmmaker, all of these take a long time because you don't know where you're heading, and to gain the trust on what you're doing, I think it takes a lot of time to do it. And especially if this is the first time making your film, I think you should take that much time. Whether that takes a year or two, like, nobody's pressuring you, like, to make the film. Like, you're the one who's pressuring yourself to make the film. So as long as you can stay connected and focused, I think as much time as possible is great for first-time filmmaking. But just be aware that the people around you might not feeling the same. So you just have to be,
Well, that's why it's important to find those people.
more open to that.
Yeah.
And production was fun. It was very stressful, but fun. I think the moment that I realized I should stay as a filmmaker was when I was working on my 310 and I was on set and I was directing something, and then I took a break and I felt my heart pouncing and I felt alive, like truly alive. Like, oh wow, this is what I love and this is what I should stay with. And I feel like if you're directing on set, you feel that when you're seeing the stuffs that were in your head happen in front of you, you feel the heart pouncing, and you feel, you know, your blood's rushing down your vein, and you feel alive.
Yeah.
And I think that's a magical feeling that makes you endure the struggles that comes with filmmaking. It's kind of like a drug to be on that set. And of course, there are so many decisions and a lot of like unexpected things that were happening on set. I think that gave me a lot of inspiration and toughened me to become more mentally stable and and clear with my vision. Because when you're encountering obstacles that if you don't find a solution right away, then your entire film can, you know, break down. Then it really clears your mind. I think it kind of goes back to my college application when, you know, I was cornered with that 3 days. It clears up your mind and kind of shows you the only answer that you can follow. And that moment happened on the last day of set. We were filming our ending, and you know, there's no film without an ending. But the location that I got, it was like very very ghetto-y bus station, and there were a lot of homeless people around, and it was very dangerous for everybody. But we had to get this last shot. But the location turned out something that I didn't expect. Like the lighting was terrible, security was really bad. There were police, you know, driving around, and we didn't have a permit, so it was very risky. And everybody was just feeling, you know, not it about this location. The DP and I were just like, yeah, this is not right for the final scene of the film. But then, you know, I was going through a very quick breakdown because, like, mental breakdown because if I don't have an ending, and my first AD is being like, Justin, you have 30 minutes, and everybody's freezing outside. Like, what do I do? Like, I've spent this much money, I've spent this much time, I've worked with this many people, and at the end of the day, like final day of production, I failed to shoot the last scene. I don't have the film. Like, what do I do? But this bus station, so it has first floor and then second floor. So second floor is the bus station. The first floor is kind of the staircase. And the staircase was the place I was having in mind because it was like very dark and dirty, and it was kind of the vibe that I was looking for. But since it didn't work out, I went to the second floor, and it miraculously had this very good lighting, that you don't need additional lighting. It would just look good. And just like the vibe of the place, when the DP and I went up, we just both immediately looked at each other and we were like, yep, this is it. Let's bring the camera and shoot it. So we did. I think we got like 2 shots from that location. And initially we had so many different shots for that location, but because there were homeless people, like, you know, cracking meth and like right next to us, like we knew we couldn't spend that much time. So we did this one-oneer, but it miraculously worked out really well. And the DP and I felt like, wow, this was movie magic. This was something that we never expected to happen, but it turned out so well that I think that moment was kind of the most exciting and the most raw moment I had from that production experience. It was such a moment of luck, but I think that's what it takes when you're doing films. Like, you prep so much, you expect so much, but then you still encounter all these unexpected variables, and sometimes you need the grace of luck to push through. But when it happens, there is no better feeling than that.
Yeah, that seems like to be like a recurring theme among filmmakers. Is just accepting accidents and happy accidents.
Yeah.
Not all of them are happy, but once, you know, something really works out, it feels like everything just comes together in a really special way.
I think an important skill trait too is, so when that happens, you have to be open-minded. Like, you have to know so much about your film that when that accident happens, you know how to integrate that into the film. And I think that's kind of the reason for a lot of prep, because once you've done that much work, then you already have the film in your head. So it's not the location or it's not the certain weather that's necessary for your film. It's just whatever's there, you know how to make it into a film. And I think that's a very important skill trait because especially as indie filmmakers, you're not in the most desirable conditions. You're not working on sets. You're not able to control a lot of things, and you kind of have to make your surroundings somehow into your film. And if you don't have that open mindset, if you don't have that amount of prep, if you don't have the amount of knowledge that you have about your own film, then the chances are you're not going to be utilizing all of the surroundings that are gifted to you to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
And I think that mindset and that clear vision is very important for you to embrace that luck and make it for your own good.
Yeah, you know that train station, that subway station location? As sketchy as it was, I went back there a few weeks later to shoot another film.
Really?
Because I was like, yo, this place is sick. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's a really nice location.
I'll show you the film later. City of Meat.
Yeah, you don't need
Yeah.
much lighting. There are cars going in and out. It was kind of like metaphoric too, and that's how you find metaphors.
This is so interesting. You're finding locations that Jaeyoung used. Like this is the second
Yeah.
one. Now.
Wait, hold on, I just realized.
I'm like sprinkling locations at this. Yeah, like now.
Yeah.
I think I find a lot of interest in people that are at their most vulnerable state, and whether they get out of the vulnerable state or deepen in it. I feel like there is something about people that you learn so much when you're really putting your lens into that situation. And I think it teaches me a lot about people and how we navigate lives. Yeah.
I do wonder, because the Hermit Crab movie is very similar to that in a way, right?
Absolutely.
And I remember when I asked you like why you were making the film, you were saying it was a lot of your fears of like leaving college into the real world, and your fears of like having to deal with those things. So I do wonder, like, is it what you imagine, finishing film school and then going into like the job market and everything? Like, is that what you thought it would be, or what are some things you realized?
Post grad definitely humbles you a lot, I think. I think a lot of people go through like identity crisis, a lot of mental crisis, because it's not what you expect right out of the blue. And I think especially college is such a safe and welcoming environment where you're with your peers and you feel like you're something. You feel like you're something because you're surrounded by people who also feel like you're something, and they're dreaming, and they're all talking about things they want to do, and there are also a lot of things that you're doing. But once post-grad hits and you kind of derail from the ideal path that a lot of people recognize as ideal path, which I think is inherent with filmmaking, then you realize the harshness of life and kind of how it shapes you as an individual. And for some reason, I always think my films, the works that I do, are kind of predictions of who I am going to be. My 310 film was a prediction of who I was going to be after my breakup. And Hermit Crab, I think, is also a film about breakup, but I think in large scope, it's about a man whose life is crumbling down and he's going through it and he just wants kind of a breath of relief. And I think that's what I'm going through, or most people go through after post-grad. They feel like the life that they lived is very separate from the post-grad life and the reality of getting rejected from stuff that you thought you were going to get into, or not living just a happy, joyful life, dealing with real struggles, really shapes you into someone that becomes more of a realist and humbles you. I think humbling is the best word to use, because it really humbles you to look at the world in a larger scope. You're not now in such an narrow-minded where you define success with few words, but post-grad teaches you that success isn't what most people define as they are. And there are a lot of ways to define success, and there are a lot of ways to make a living and continue what you want to do. So
Yeah, no, definitely. Do you feel like, what are some things you learned that helped you get over a lot of the mental turmoil of post-grad life?
I think it's just all about setting the right mindset.
Okay.
I think mindset is so important because um, to do something that you want to do, that you're so passionate about, whether that's, filmmaking or starting a business or, doing something that requires a lot of strength from you, you have to be sort of delusional, very, very confident, and very, very hopeful about things.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing that, then the reality will strike you, because the reality will, constantly grab you and say, you're not going to do it. Find a way to live more comfortably. Just follow whatever everybody's doing.
Yeah.
But then to do something that you want to do, like, you have to say, no, I want to do this because I know I can do it. And I think that's the most difficult part with post grad, because you're constantly in a situation where it's really hard to tell yourself that what you're doing is right. What you're doing will eventually have results.
Yeah.
It's really hard to say that because you're surrounded by people who are getting the results that you want to get, or who are living comfortable lives. Um, and, and you kind of get into the path where you want to chase that path. But then you just have to, pull yourself back and say that, I have a dream and I really want to chase this.
Yeah.
So I think it's all about getting that mindset of, sort of being delusional, but trusting in what you're doing, and thinking life as something that's, not short but very long. um 10 years, 20 years, it may take 30 years, but eventually, if you get to do what you wanted to do, then I think that's worth it, because you only get to live once. And if you were to die without accomplishing what you really wanted to do in life, then I feel like if I were to regret on my deathbed,
Yeah.
that would be so much at the
Mhm.
end of my life.
Of
And I
course.
don't want to go through that. And I think you just have to constantly remind that to yourself, and stay very positive. I think falling into the negativity, which is so easy to do, especially as artists, when you're very self-critical and you're faced with a lot of criticisms, it's so easy to fall into negativity. You have to get out of there. Like, you have to force yourself out of there, and just tell yourself you're a genius. You're a genius filmmaker. Your screenplay is so good, but it's just people are stupid and they're not recognizing it. I feel like you have to constantly tell yourself these things,
Yeah.
or else you'll find yourself quickly in the gutter,
Yeah.
self-loathing, and going through some ugly path.
Yeah,
I think
no.
it's just so easy to go fall into that self, like, when you don't believe in yourself anymore.
Yeah.
Self doubt. You write a script and you're like, am I even meant to be a filmmaker?
Right. And then it's like so like mentally taxing, because one day, or actually, like one morning, you're like feeling like, oh, I can do this, like, I'm such a great filmmaker. I watched my film last night and it's so good. And then by evening, you're writing a screenplay and you're like, this is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what am I doing? And then and then and then you go out to dinner and you eating with your parents, and then you kind of notice their gaze and you're like, oh, I just wrote a bad screenplay. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm letting them down, and I feel like I'm letting myself down, and unemployment is real, and am I going to be living this life for the rest of my life? And that's a very long time, and all these fears really easily come to you.
Yeah.
But then again, the next morning you wake up and you're like, I feel like I got this. So it's like really easy to get to this path of mentally very split state.
Yeah.
That is very taxing. So it's just nice to stop thinking, stop worrying, and get your mind straight, and just really trust, and also think that a lot of filmmakers that you love have walked on the similar mental struggling path.
Yeah.
And just continue doing it.
What are some like practical steps you take to,
Mm-hmm.
keep going at it? I mean, keep writing, even though, the page might be not so great, that you're self-critical. And what are some ways that you keep yourself busy creatively?
I think you got to keep a job that is not so related to filmmaking or any creative stuff, but just something that you can repeatedly do, it might not have to be a job. It might be workout, or it might be, whatever activity it is, something that keeps your mental state healthy. Something that, you just exhaust yourself, not thinking about films or anything, self-hatred regarding, just keeping yourself busy in something, I think has been very helpful for me in keeping my mental state peaceful. And when you're encountering issues with writing or creative stuffs, for me, my preferred way is to keep pushing it until I get an answer. And it's a very painful process, to be honest. It takes a lot of, mental struggle, time, and I have to go through so many different, thought processes. But then I think that's also the fun of the job, getting really deep into what you're creating and pushing yourself until you find something that you kind of like. And I think that's a very necessary step. You're nobody's that talented to be like they write something and it's already so great. Most of the times what you write, even until the end when you lock the script, there's something that you hate about. But you just have to constantly push yourself until you get to the point where you cannot write anything more about what you're writing. And I think I get satisfaction from that. So that's the only way I keep myself motivated, Like if I don't push myself right now, then what am I doing?
Yeah.
I've worked so hard to become a filmmaker, but now I'm not doing it because I'm lazy. That kind of feels very contrasting for me, and it's betraying on myself.
Definitely.
So I think you just have to constantly push yourself until you get something that you're satisfied with, although that's very difficult. And make yourself think, if I'm not doing this, then I'm not doing anything. Yeah.
And I feel like you have so much like knowledgeable on like the mental health aspect of it, and you have a lot of like philosophies on how you approach creativity, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, like what, where did you learn all this from?
First thing, I was very interested in philosophy. Like I'm still very interested. And I think it really helps as a writer. And when you're looking at things, you kind of look at it with reason and with a new perspective.
Yeah.
But also, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of just spending time alone and thinking about different things, thinking about yourself really helps. Nowadays, it's been kind of, shower or driving.
Yeah.
That's been helping me with that alone time. But getting comfortable with being alone, getting comfortable with spending a lot of time thinking about the stuff that you have to think about by yourself. I think that's a challenge for a lot of people, like
Yeah.
being in that state. But as an artist, and also for a good mental state, I think it's important because it's hard to keep your mental state healthy by sharing so much about it with others. When you're sharing with others, you're sharing what you've learned. You're not improving your mental state because the chances are, you're kind of exhausting your psychological, physical energy with them, especially just in my perspective. So I feel like it's imperative to get to know how to become comfortable with yourself. And I think college is a place that doesn't teach you how to get to that state because there's just so many people and there's so many attractions. But it's true, a lot of people spend a lot of times in their dorms because not all of us, are, like super big on parties or super big on get-togethers. Some people are introverted, and a lot of people have to spend time studying or doing what they have to do.
Yeah.
And colleges don't really prepare you mentally how to get comfortable with that. So I think a lot of people fall into depression or a lot of just ugly thoughts because they're spending so much time alone, and they equate that as falling behind.
Yeah.
And I think that's so wrong. I think, spending time alone and being comfortable with it is the greatest strength that you can have in living today's society because so many people
Absolutely.
are not comfortable with that. And once you're comfortable with that, then you're comfortable with spending more time with other people and being an individual yourself. So yeah, I think I've spent a lot of time, especially in the latter years of my college, when, personal relationships were getting more scarce and I was getting more into my filmmaking process.
Yeah.
I think I think I spent a lot of time just mentally toughening myself and finding activities and times that I can really enjoy
Yeah.
just being alone and getting my stuff together.
You know, the other day I was driving back home from my internship, and it's a long car drive. It's very crowded. Traffic, in LA sucks. And I was just really, for the first time, I turned off my car or like the radio on it because every time I would be listening to podcasts and
Right.
stuff. And for the first time, I was just driving in silence, just thinking about like new movie ideas and just like things I want to tell stories about. And I was able to come up with so many ideas on that car drive back. And it just shows that when you're actively thinking about things like that,
Right.
your brain comes up with all these
Right.
creative ideas. And I think right now there's just so much distractions out there.
Yeah.
There's Instagram, social media, YouTube, everything is just constantly blasting at you. And when you are just passively taking these things in, you just are never able to really come up with these creative ideas. So I love what you just, said about that.
I mean, there's some filmmakers that I always, watch their interviews for advice and screenwriting. Um, and I think it was Paul Thomas Anderson who said, you have to get yourself, up to your laptop or a paper to write, or it won't come to you. Like, if a genius like Paul Thomas Anderson says that, then I feel like that just explains everything. I feel like it's really hard for you to come up with an idea or story when you're not actively searching for it.
Exactly.
Which was the point that I made with when I wanted to become crazy with movies. It was that kind of a mental state where I just wanted to actively find stuff to talk about, even when I'm not, in that zone. I feel like a lot of people say that, oh, that zone doesn't come to me, or, it's hard to find that state. But to be honest, you really have to struggle to find that state, or it won't come to you. And you have to find a time to do it. But I feel like a lot of us kind of skip on the discovering part, the finding the time part, and just expects stuff to happen. But filmmaking and art and just in life, like nothing just comes to you. And if something just comes to you, then chances are it's not the best opportunity. And I feel like a lot of the great opportunities are created by yourself or created through hard work with like-minded people. So, I feel like just finding time, as you said, whether in your car or a shower or your bedroom, just finding the time and space to really get down to ideas is very important.
I actually just started doing something. So like every morning I wake up and set like a timer for 10 minutes, and I just like write down whatever. I don't care if it's poetry, if it's just literally what's on my mind, or like, oh, I'm excited to see this movie. Like it could be anything, and it's just for those 10 minutes I feel like I'm able to dump out so much like a distraction or just like mental energy that I would spend during my day like thinking about, and I just spend that 10 minutes and try to splash them all on there. Some of the time there's some great, story ideas like Diane said, where it just pops up in your head, and a lot of times when you go by your day, like you have that idea but it just disappears because you got busy with something else. And so I found that to be really helpful. Like you just like a lot of times for me too, like it's hard for me to really start writing because I'm also such a perfectionist, but that gives like that safety net of like, okay, for these 10 minutes it could either just be, writing down my doubts, or it could just be screenwriting. 10 minutes of dumping out ideas that I have about this story idea or that one, or it could be, a childhood memory. And so I think that's something that I found useful, is to just have that pocket of time where you're just free to do whatever, whether it's writing or creating or whatever.
And I think that's what's so great about post-grad, because you have so much time. Like you have so much time to actually do what you want to do.
Wow. Yeah.
And if you're negatively seeing that, then you could be like, oh, I have so much time. Like I should be working. I should be doing something that makes, money or elevates my something. But if you see it in a positive view, then that amount of time that you're given at this moment, is such a valuable amount of time that you can spend into doing something that you want to do. And yeah, absolutely, like you need so much time to get down to what you want to do, and you have to actively create that time.
Right, and it's like if you don't cast the fishing line, you won't catch the
Yeah,
fish. You know,
yeah.
you
And
gotta get those
as
ideas.
the late David Lynch said,
Exactly.
if you have a great idea in mind and you don't write it down and you forget, you want to commit suicide.
Yeah, he said that on multiple occasions. Yeah, this is like one of his famous quotes.
And I think I really feel that,
Yeah.
like, it's so hard to have a great idea because it just takes so much time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just about having a great idea. After you have a great idea, how do you develop into something? That also takes a lot of time. I feel like oftentimes, like, we think about a great idea and we get so excited over the fact that we have a great idea that, we kind of lose it.
Yeah.
But it really matters how you deal with that great idea and then develop into the finished project. And that takes a lot of time. So
yeah.
if you're a filmmaker and you're in post-grad right now and you're so scared of all the time that you have, and you feel like you're so lost, and I feel like just get back to the page and write.
Yeah.
And there's the possibility, there's the way out. And even if it doesn't work out, then write another page and there's another way out. I feel like as artists, that's such a great thing about what we do. Like, we create our ways out. We create our own success. Like, we create our career. And I think that's what's so great about it. And you can always just go back to the page and write and start a new direction. So.
And earlier you talked about like dreams, right? And you are chasing this dream. What is your dream? What? Because I'm assuming you want to be a director, but also I want you to expand on that. Like, what kind of a director, or what kind of other things are you chasing?
I think this is kind of funny because my ultimate goal that I always said a long time ago was something so far from film. It was having a bed and breakfast after retirement.
Yeah.
Because I really like cooking, and I just thought it would be so nice to have, your kids and your partner and have a bed and breakfast and have new guests come in, like they'll all be working in different professions and doing different things, knowing different things about life. And you cook a good meal every night and talk, and I felt like it would be a nice way to just spend a good chunk of my last few years in life doing that.
That's amazing.
But in terms of filmmaking, I think it's about creating something that lasts. I've always been mesmerized by the idea of something that lasts. And I think that's also, like, as artists, what we always chase for, like, your work lasting longer than who you are. And your work representing yourself. Like, if you think about it, like, we're directors, but if you're an actor or if you're a musician, I talked about this with my partner recently. Especially if you're a musician, you're singing and you have your songs on like Spotify or Apple Music, and people from across the world, across the globe, listen to you. Like, you're in South Korea's Seoul in your car and you're listening to Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar is there.
Yeah.
Like, he's speaking. Even if he's, like several years later, like even if he passes away, he's still there. If you start listening to his music, I think that's such a mesmerizing kind of concept. And I think that's so great about art, that it outlives you.
Yeah.
And it still represents you and you're alive there.
Yeah.
And I think for me, as an artist, as a filmmaker, it's my kind of desired path to make something that lasts and means a lot for people, which was kind of the reason I wanted to become a filmmaker, to influence people and give kind of more of a social change. Yeah. And I think I've always been interested in talking about people who are lost and people who are, like kind of overshadowed by others. And I think creating films about them and having them last will help people, as they did, as the films of those subject matters helped me, to kind of feel like they're not so alone and they're being heard. Right. So I think, yeah, that's not so I'm not so greedy about awards or greedy about like financial gains, but I'll be happy if somebody watched my movie and went like, oh yeah, that's like my top three. I feel
Yeah.
like that'd be such an honor to have.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm taking Daniel Noah's class right now, which you
Yeah.
took. And one of the reasons I took it was because you and Daniel recommended it. But one of the stories he told, which I'm sure you heard the story as well, was when his film Mandy, which he produced,
Hmm.
premiered I think at Sundance or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
and he didn't know how people were gonna react, and he was on stage. He just did a quick Q&A, and he was about to step down. This really sort of shy girl came up
Mm.
to him. I'm sure he's told the same exact story, but like she wasn't sure like how to go about it, and he was like, no, it's okay. Like, what are you trying to say? And she just went, I thought I was the only one who felt that way. This
Right.
is my favorite movie, and I think she just like left or something, and then that had like a profound impact on
Hmm.
Daniel who produced the movie because he realized that all this time and effort into creating a film and art that nobody knows was ever going to have any kind of real impact on people, and that all of a sudden this person comes up to you
Hmm.
and goes, that's the best thing I've seen because I felt there's that piece of me that's in there, and that's just such a incredible feeling. I think we're all chasing
Right.
after that to have that impact that's larger than you and your physical self.
And I think that's a very important thing to think about and chase, but also you got to think about, so if that's where you want to go, if that those are the films that you want to make and have the much meaning to the audience, then you also got to think of yourself as a filmmaker, because that's a lot of responsibility to bear, to be able to tell those stories, to be able to make those films. You can't just spend such little time mastering your craft and make a film and expect it to be something special. I feel like to make something that lasts, it takes that much time,
Mm.
and it requires that much of a thought process. And all in all, that comes down to sincerity. And I feel like that's oftentimes what's not so taught by film schools, or oftentimes not something that we think about. Sincerity is, I think, a very important thing to have in with you as you're approaching your film, writing your film. Um, and I mean, there's so many reasons why, like, personal films are doing so well these days, because personal films are just inherently sincere to you. But there is a limit to telling just pure personal stories. But then how do you make each subject, each film personal to you? And it's giving that sincerity. But to be able to give that sincerity, I think it just takes a lot of time to study the craft, to really get yourself into writing something that feels truthful to you. And it's so easy to say like, oh, this sounds truthful, or like this is truthful, but it takes time for you to really feel that this work is truthful and honest to you. And I think that only comes with some struggles, like personal struggles. You have to go through some. You sometimes have to hit the mental gutter to be able to know, oh, this is a sincere story.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I feel like it's not something that you just get out of immediately. Like, just because you decide to do film doesn't mean that you're on the level where you can be the most sincere and the most thoughtful with your works. Oftentimes, it's so easy to just do things because they look just cool, do things because others are doing, um, which is kind of the reason I'm not so proud of all the works that I've done so far, because I feel like they were mostly just adaptations of works that I really liked, mixed with my own feelings and thoughts and directions, but I don't think they were super sincere in terms of the craft and how I came up with it. So I think that's kind of what I'm working on now,
Mm.
finding that sincerity and finding that depth
Right.
that is very important in terms of what we do. And I think that also sets you apart as a filmmaker. I think all the filmmakers that we love have their own sincerity and depth to it that really tells us. that it's their film and it's their voice.
No, absolutely. And what are some stuff you're working on? Like, what are you writing right now?
I'm currently working on a short film. It's called I Live Inside the Cabinet. It's kind of a surrealistic, dark comedy type of film that speaks on kind of the housing issues that we have in LA. I feel like house is something that molds you into a specific person. And especially living in a metropolis, whether that's LA, New York, Hong Kong, Seoul, Japan, Tokyo, um, the housing conditions are quite dire for people who are not, wealthy. And especially in LA, like the rent is like $3,000, like $2,000, $3,000, and that's almost impossible for, just average worker, average person to be paying off every month.
Yeah.
But then we're forced into that situation, and if we don't, then we're forced into very, very um, difficult living conditions. And there is a reason we're seeing so many homeless population, so many people who live in their cars in LA. And I think just as a society, that's so wrong, and I think it's ridiculous. But because it's so ridiculous, there's kind of humor to it and comedy to it. And that's what I love about dark comedy and mixing surrealistic genre with it.
Yeah.
So currently, the project I'm working on is about a society in LA, future society, where the housing prices have risen so much that people live in cabinets with like $5 a month for rent. But one day, our protagonist breaks his neck from fitting inside the cabinet for so long, and discovers that he cannot fit inside his cabinet no longer. So now he has to kind of figure out a way to find a way of living.
I love that. That's such a fun idea.
Yeah.
And when you say you broke his neck, as in like
he has a herniated neck disc.
That's why you can't fit.
Yeah.
Ooh, wow.
And herniated neck disc usually comes when you're maintaining a really bad posture for a long time.
Right.
And I imagined, what would people who are living in cabinets go through?
Yeah.
And the biggest problem would be bad posture, because you can't be sleeping on a nice mattress. So herniated neck disc was something that I came up with, but then the story just naturally came. Then if he has the neck collar, he cannot fit inside the cabinet. Then what does he do? And kind of all that.
Wow. Yeah, I can see a lot of comedy in that, like dark comedy in it, because you got the thing and it like restricts your movement, and like there's a lot of opportunity.
The funny thing is, comedy. I thought it was a ridiculous idea to have a film where people live inside cabinets, but then I've been researching, and in Hong Kong and and in Tokyo and in Seoul, it's a reality. Like coffin homes is a reality, and literally they live inside cabinets, and that's like a common living condition. And I hope LA doesn't hit that phase, but we are statistically having a huge population growth, and the rent price has increased more than ever. Like LA is one of the most expensive cities to live in, and already so many people are sharing rooms. Like especially if you're sharing rooms with like 3 to 4 people, you're already living in a cabinet-like situation where you can't do much in terms of your living condition. So I feel like this type of story, although as absurd as the concept is, I feel like would resonate with a lot of us, and especially for me, trying to figure out a living condition post-grad, with not the most profitable job. Finding that living condition has been very desperate, very dire. So it oddly is a very personal film. Yeah.
I love that, dude. That's so fun.
I see a recurring theme here for sure. With your films.
But I hope your trend of ending up like your protagonist doesn't continue.
I think it's kind of inevitable.
Oh no.
I like.
What if this is a way to separate yourself from that? It's like an expression that paints a possible future, but then by doing so, it clears the air a little bit, and you can see things a little bit clearer. I think that. I think say that's a.
I think
way to look at it.
I think it's interesting how my film catches up to my life, because in that sense, it becomes a very, very personal film. And I feel like it's impossible for me to not live through what my characters are going through or feeling when I'm writing. And although they are very absurd and the circumstances they're in are not, a good circumstance, like all the emotions that they're feeling are stuff that I felt or will feel.
Yeah.
Um, and in that case, that's how those films become very personal to me. Although I've never, gone through a divorce or lived in a cabinet. Um, and I guess this is something that I want to talk about. How to make personal films is, the story itself doesn't have to be like autobiographical to become a personal film. And I think inherently all projects that you write and direct are personal to you because, how could they not be personal when you're putting your sweat and blood into them? It's always personal in the sense that the characters, what they're feeling, are the feelings that you felt. Some of the situations are the situations that you've gone through. And what you try to tell with the film is what you believe in life. Like, those are what make the film personal. Like, it doesn't have to be a step-by-step autobiographical film to be personal. So I know a lot of filmmakers are really struggling to find a great idea or a story because they're afraid that this is not personal, and if it's not personal, then it's going to be hard to convince others, or hard to convince the festivals or distribution companies to take interest in your project. But I feel like there's no need to be so concerned about that because whatever you do is inherently personal, and you find ways to make it so personal to you. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Spielberg said something similar where, he didn't make The Fablemans until like
Right.
2 years ago, but
Right.
he said that there are hints of his own emotionality in pretty much every movie he's made, like in E.T., the
Right.
whole family dynamic.
Like Jurassic Park was personal to him because he was such a dinosaur nerd when he was a kid.
Yeah.
Schindler's List because of his ethnicity.
Yeah.
Like all of his films, like Jaws because he was afraid of sharks.
Yeah.
Like everything is personal to you, and like Bong Joon-ho, he's never made an autobiographical film, but all of his films you can tell that it's his film and it's personal to him because you see his thoughts and perspective in it.
Right.
And
his views and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's something that develops over time too. You can't
Yeah.
really go like wake up tomorrow and
Yeah.
I know exactly who I am, and this is gonna
that's
be
the sincerity that needs time
Right.
to develop and really get.
Right.
And it's hard to get.
I think Daniel said something in the episode before, but he was like, every movie you make is like a diary entry in your own life.
It's an embarrassing diary entry.
It could be very embarrassing where you're like, that's not so great. But then I think, 5 years on, 10 years after,
Right.
you look back and you're like, oh, that's the kind of story I'm interested in. That's the
Right.
style I was into, and that's who I was at that point. And I think that's kind of a beautiful thing to
Right.
experience. Yeah.
And a filmmaker that I really love who does that is Charlie Kaufman. You watch his films and it's all brutally, brutally personal to him. Even the film Synecdoche, New York, there's a line, I only want brutal truth. And I think that's what's so powerful about him because Eternal Sunshine, Being John Malkovich, Adaptation, and Synecdoche, New York, those are all very, very surrealistic, absurd, weird, and out of the world films, but you can tell that it's the most personal story to the filmmaker because you hear that from the dialogue, you hear from how the characters behave, and you see that from where the film goes. And it's so powerful how they all interact with together. And yeah, I feel like that's what makes a really good storyteller. Permeating your personal identity and stories into areas that are unnatural to you, uncomfortable to you, somehow making it an embarrassing diary entry.
Yeah. And I think we talk a lot about like philosophies and like why we're making art, right? You do speak like, we only live one life, right? And our life is limited. So I do want to, this could be dark. Viewer, listener discretion is advised. But what do you think happens after death?
I feel like a lot of like kids like have that question and make them sleepless at night. I was one of those kids.
Me too.
Thought about it for a long, long time until like I was 20.
Oh, yeah.
Like it would literally wake me up at night.
Same.
Like
I've had that
I'll
experience.
get so scared But after I had some kind of a convincing of myself and more of a research into the subject matter,
Yeah.
I've been able to sleep peacefully.
Okay.
And I truly believe there is nothing, like the state of nothing, which is hard to embrace, but it's easy to imagine if you try to imagine what happened before you were born.
Right. I was gonna say exactly that. Yeah.
And if you imagine that, then you go, I don't know, like I literally have no idea. But if you think about it, the world and Big Bang happened like 4.6 billion years ago. The world that we know as it is has existed for 4.6 billion years, and you know nothing of it because you were not existent during that time. Um, but now here you are, and I think we're all bound to go back to that state of nothingness. But I think I take it as more of like we had the most utmost privilege to somehow turn on a television that's been on for 4.6 billion years and get to watch the greatest shows that it can offer for the duration of your lifetime. And if you think about it, then there's nothing that you cannot do, and there's nothing that you cannot dream, because to imagine having that television on after 4.6 billion years and only watching the most boring documentary show ever, what a waste. Like that's such a waste. You want to watch the greatest shows, the best movies that you can watch, but just to watch like the most boring TV shows, like I feel like that's such a waste. And if you also have the thought that there's nothing after you're dead, then I feel like that really motivates you to do something that means something to you, and really enjoy the life. Because I think it's really hard to, whilst you're living your busy day, to stop for a moment and appreciate the state of living.
Yeah.
That you're alive. That you can, whatever hardship you're feeling, you can feel it because you're alive, and then when you're dead, it just doesn't exist. And like right now too, like I really appreciate the moment that I'm able to safely talk about my thoughts with people that I like in a safe environment. Like this is such a privilege. Mm-hmm. And having that thought, I think, just extends to a lot of small privileges that you feel as you're living. Just whether you're unemployed, whether you failed something big, just the fact that you can go home and sleep on your bed is such a big privilege, because there's so many people outside that are freezing or in war zones that are concerned about dying, and you're not in those shoes. So I feel like kind of having that convincing that there's nothing after death has made me appreciate a lot of the littlest things in life and see life in a broader perspective.
Yeah, there's this quote I really like that goes, somewhere out there, there's someone who would consider all their dreams come true if they were to live your life.
Yeah.
Like if they were to live just one day of your life, that is their lifelong dream, and I think that puts everything into perspective. I mean, we want to do film, and we're at USC, and went to USC, and that's like
try to recall
already
yourself like before USC. Like,
no, yeah,
you'd
literally,
be thinking of
yeah.
people who got into USC and who were studying
all the time,
at USC,
dreaming. Yeah,
you don't really think about what they're doing after, but you're just only thinking that they got into USC, and you just expect them to be having the best days of their lives. But was that the case? I feel like some days, but not all of the case. And that's kind of the case for most. Like just becoming a successful filmmaker, now we all think, if I become a successful filmmaker, my life is just going to be
then
green
I'll be this.
and blue and so good.
Yeah.
But they all have their own struggles. And there's never a satisfaction until you just say, yes, I'm satisfied.
Yeah. It's just one day at a time.
Yeah.
It's something that made me, like, because I always be thinking about that as well. I also made a movie about what happens after death. Wow. I'm going to show you after this podcast.
Okay.
It's like a short film. But I realized that I think the reason why I'm so scared of someday there's a potential of not having every memory I have, not knowing the people I love, is so scary is because I haven't really lived the life yet. I think we're all like 20-ish.
Right.
And we haven't really done that much with our lives. And I would just think that maybe one day when we're like 70, 80, we have lived a full life that we are satisfied and we are okay with letting go. And that's the reason why I think people who are more older and more mature aren't as, thinking about stuff like this as we are now. And I think that made me feel a lot more comfortable because I realized, I will be satisfied. I will be happy one day with, potentially losing everything, anyway.
I feel like you shouldn't be complacent, but also you should embrace just the state of what it is sometimes. Like, I feel like if you're very driven, as one should be in their young age, it's so hard to tell yourself that whatever you've built so far is worth as what it is. And you're always looking at people that have more than you or are in better places than you, and you feel so shit about it. But keeping yourself in that position only makes things worse. And also, the late David Lynch said, being depressed is the worst thing for creativity, and I truly believe in that. You should be an artist, but you shouldn't be an artist who committed suicide. And I feel like there is a big difference, that people confuse. People think you have to be
at a
certain
artist archetype.
Yeah, at a certain state, or you should be doing like these substances, or you should be doing something that the cool artist did, for you to get in their position. But no, like we all have different ways to getting to that state, and there's so many ways to get into that state healthy. And most virtuosos, most great filmmakers are in that healthy state. That's why they've been able to do it for so long. And the greatest example is if you look at jazz musicians, Miles Davis, Chet Baker, and Dizzy Gillespie. Like Miles Davis is the most popular one because he had the longest career, and that's because he's tried to stay away from drug as much as possible. But then you have Bill Evans, Chet Baker, and all these other artists who were great at their time, but lived until like they were like 50 because they had all these drug problems, and that's not a good thing for yourself. Like if you cannot live as an artist the life that you want to live for the longest time, then that's not a good thing. And having these thoughts of pressure and only looking at accomplishments are against having that long, stable career, stable life. So I feel like it's really important to have a grounded mindset and keep things healthy. And also, like, if there are people around you that are, keep forcing you to do unhealthy stuffs and putting yourself into places that you don't want to be, it's the absolute right thing to cut them off. And don't be afraid that, if you cut them off, then you lose all your connections. That's never the truth. That's never the fact. There's so many people in the world. People will always come to you. And the more healthier, the more better person you become, the equivalent people will come to you. So I think that's something that we all are always afraid of, like not having enough people around our lives. But there will always be enough people around our lives, and at a certain point, it just becomes who you want in your life and who you don't want. And it's also important to have the skill set to decide and have a clear vision.
Yeah, people you surround yourself with.
Yeah, it's very important.
Yeah.
One question I would ask you is, what are 3 things that you're grateful for, and what are 3 things that you're trying to achieve?
I think I'm first very grateful that I'm at a state where I can write and do film. I think that's a lot of privilege, that I don't have to be so concerned about, just living. The pressure, the weight of living doesn't suppress me to giving up on writing and doing filmmaking. I think that's an immense privilege that I have, that I'm very grateful for. Second thing is the people that I have. I think it's often easy to neglect the importance and the value in the people that are around you because they kind of feel so natural to be around you. But once they leave and you see the void, that's when you realize, oh, yeah, that person meant a lot in my life. So I'm really grateful for the people that I have around me. And I hate using the term connection with people because I feel like that's a very business and shallow
Mm.
term with people. They're friends or they're acquaintances or yada yada, but not connections. So yeah, I'm really grateful for the people around me. Third, I think I'm grateful that I was able to make a film right after graduation, or like before graduation actually, and complete it after graduation. I think if I didn't have Hermit Crab, I feel like I would have struggled much more mentally, and I feel like I would have been very lost. But whether it does great in the festival run or not, I think it was a great insurance and something that tells me that I'm a filmmaker and that I have something under my belt. I think I'm very grateful to have that in my filmography as kicking my career off. Um, because it's really rare to have that kind of privilege to be able to make a film that you want to make. It takes a lot of time and effort and a lot of people. I think I'm very grateful that I had all those resources to be able to do something that I wanted to do before graduation. Three things that I'm looking forward to. First thing is making a film this year, make another film this year. Um, I think that's what I'm the most excited about, just naturally. Second thing is, I had something in my memory. Um, Second thing is seeing where everything kind of goes. Like currently, I've with the film that's in the festival run, like I've had everything prepared and now it's going out. And seeing the real implications, I think would guide me how I should navigate my filmmaking career. So I'm really excited to see that. And third of all is kind of enjoying more of my 20s. Um, Not really looking forward to like meeting a lot of new people. I think I would rather enjoy cherishing my friends and the time I spend with my friends right now. Um, and having more time with family because I think the more you grow up, you get married or you find you get very busy with career, it's very difficult to spend time with family. And I have a dog, and he's getting old. So I wish to spend as much time as I can within the given time. A lot of people say that you have to give at least 10 years until you find a light in this industry, and I think it's true. There's so many people that find early success, but compare that number to the amount of people that are in the industry and the people that are working, it's 1%. But because of how the media, shows them and how often we are exposed to them, it often feels like they are the norm and they are the standard and they are what it takes to start this journey. But I just want to say it really isn't, and you have to see more of the people that are putting so much hard work, so much, enduring so much kind of mental struggle, pain, and all those, realistic turmoils to pursue what they want to pursue. And I think there's a lot of courage in that. And I think there's a lot of things that we can learn from. And I think those are the people that you should be looking for and that you should be learning from than, those early successes, because the chances are like you're not going to be that early success. It doesn't mean that you're not a failure. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. So really stick to this work. Really stick to what you're doing. Whether it's, getting somewhere or not, just stick to it for as long as you can until, you feel so done with it. then you don't have any regrets. But if you give up because you just feel like you're not good enough right now, then of course you're not good enough because you haven't took time to become good enough. um, so yeah, just to all the filmmakers that are in my shoes that are starting, I feel like just stay healthy, endure, and continue mastering your craft until you get somewhere, and you will. I feel like after how many years, I think everybody gets at least one knock at the door, and you either make it or not, but at least you got the knock, and you can leave clean.
That's
Yeah.
so beautiful.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a marathon, not a sprint. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really important.
All
Thank
right.
you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. It was fun.
This is
really
great.
fun.
Yeah.
So much wisdom.
Yeah,
And I'm sure it's so helpful to our audiences.
I've never talked this
Yeah.
much.
No, this is part of the reason why we do it. Is because
Yeah.
we also get to just talk about these things.
Yeah.
In a more professional manner. So.
And
I mean, I think it's really great that you're having podcasts with people that are working really hard to do what they want to do, because those people are very often overlooked. But those people are the people that we should all be listening to, because who can't talk about their struggles before their breakthrough? Like, I can talk to high school students about the how you don't have to go to film school, like how you don't have to like work so hard in high school because do whatever you want to do. But the reality is, like, it kind of isn't like that. Like, there's things that you earn from going to film school, and there are things that you earn from working hard. So after you've made it, the wisdom that you share is very different from the people that are on their way to making it.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's really important to have those both perspectives. But when you're just searching on YouTube or Instagram, it's really difficult to just listen to people that are on the same shoes as you, those comforting stories. So I think, yeah, it's very valuable of what you guys do. I think it's really valuable work, and
thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the void we're trying to fill because we feel it ourselves too. Like,
right.
we don't really see, people who are just up and coming and working hard at it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are so many people that are
Oh yeah, absolutely.
dying to listen to these words, to listen to their peers. Although, like, because we're surrounded in this very good environment of LA and USC, like, we're fortunate enough to be able to talking about these subjects with peers and hear more of their thoughts. But imagine you're in a city or in town or in places where, like, meeting these people is not irregular.
Right.
You have to go to festivals, you have to go to certain areas to be able to engage in these
Right.
conversations.
Or YouTube or
Yeah, and-
online. That's it. Yeah.
and really share what you're feeling. It's really tough. So I think it's great that this exists and this is continuing work. And yeah, I hope more audiences get engaged.
Sweet. Yeah. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, man.
That's a wrap on this episode of the First Act Break podcast. This was great, and more to come.
Yep.
Peace.
More to come.